ASB, one step ahead and bringing you Nightline.
Tonight on Nightline, locals at the top of the South Island look to protect their homes from swollen rivers after a day of torrential rain. Did the APEC leader's statement that the economic crisis will be over in 18 months get blanket approval? The Rugby League World Cup trophy arrives at its home for the next 5 years. And out of rehab and on with his new project, the former Darkness frontman talks about Hot Leg.
This is Nightline with Samantha Hayes.
Kia ora, good evening. Officials were close to declaring a state of emergency in the Nelson region as heavy rain caused flooding. Police are warning drivers to take extreme care anywhere in the Nelson, Blenheim and West Coast areas. State Highway 60 is closed because of a slip on Takaka Hill, and State Highway 6 is closed between Hira and Havelock due to flooding. Helen Vaughan reports.
Widespread heavy rain has left many rivers swollen, making driving conditions treacherous and threatening houses.
Our property's lower than the road level.
And that it's still raining.
Vineyards turned into lakes as up to 300 millimetres of rain fell in parts of the Nelson region in just 24 hours. Civil defence were mobilised, putting down sandbags to protect roads and properties.
We've come very close to declaring an emergency. It's still an option, although I believe that it's not going to be necessary.
Locals say they were shocked by the speed the water rose.
We got home today and there was about 3 or 4 steps showing. So over the past 3 hours, about an hour a step, the place has actually come up, and as you can see, just about hit my lawn in this beautiful new house I just bought.
I've never seen it this bad, and we've had rain warnings before, but it's looking a bit frightening. I think the house opposite's already flooded.
Golden Bay is currently cut off as a slip on the Takaka side of Takaka Hill has closed State Highway 60. This viewer video shows the extent of the flooding in Takaka. The owner of the Junction Hotel in Takaka says it's the worst she's seen in 25 years.
I don't think you can do much. It's huge. It's more than you can imagine. It's just like a huge sheet of water. You just got to walk away and look and just make sure that the bodies are safe, I think.
She says it's very scary.
It is unsafe. You'd be off your feet. Between the garage where I went down to have a look, I was very conscious of hanging onto the fence because the water was swift and was only up to my knees.
The heavy rain has eased and the Met Service says the worst is over for the region. But the Civil Defence says they'll still monitor the region overnight. Helen Vaughan, 3 News.
John Key's first APEC has ended with him not exactly endorsing the 21 leaders' final communique. It said they'd agreed the world's economic crisis would be overcome within 18 months. But Key appeared to question that statement. Political editor Duncan Garner explains.
When you usually dress up in suits worth more than $1,000, dressing down in a muddy brown Peruvian poncho can make you seem a touch self-conscious, wondering where to put your arms and hands.
Kevin Rudd said, where do you put your hands? And as the President of Mexico pointed out, it's you're meant to keep your hands hidden so they can't see your guns.
This is what's usually dubbed the silly shirt shot. Today it became the poncho picture. So will John Key wear it again?
I might put it up for auction and see whether we can raise some money for charity.
Behind the scenes, the final communique took a much tougher line on the global economic crisis. John Key had suggested it needed some work.
Well, the fact that it changed and it strengthened up and there's a commitment to send trade ministers to Geneva has got to be seen as a positive.
This APEC was dominated by the global economic meltdown, and most agreed that workers will only see the real impact next year. So the leaders have put their reputations on the line, saying they are convinced the economic crisis will be overcome in 18 months. They've agreed there's to be no new barriers to trade for 12 months, and they've instructed their trade ministers to get stalled trade talks resolved before Christmas. But Key's not so sure about the 18-month time limit being put on the economic crisis. He's suggesting it's just guesswork.
It's an aspirational target. Whether it can be achieved, I guess will yet to be seen.
Key also had a 10-minute pull-aside with President Bush, and there are signs new President Obama's administration will be keen to complete the free trade deal with New Zealand that Phil Goff kicked off in New York 2 months ago.
He didn't make any comments in relation to that, but Susan Schwab, the US trade negotiator, did, and yesterday she seemed to give indications that it was likely that the Obama administration would ensure that there was a successful completion.
So John Key can be satisfied with his own performance here at APEC, although he's slightly sceptical with what the APEC leaders have come up with in the final communique. He now heads to London to meet the Queen and British Prime Minister Gordon Brown. It certainly gives him momentum so early in his job as Prime Minister. He'll then want to head home though and put all his talk into action. National will pass the tax cuts into law before Christmas, and they will come into effect in April next year. Duncan Garner, Lima, 3 News.
In a world full of economic doom and gloom, 3 greedy old men and a pretty princess have shared a fairy tale ending in Dunedin. It's a lotto syndicate formed by 4 factory workers who recently learned they were being made redundant as part of Fisher & Paykel's cutbacks. But today, the 4 were sharing $1 million lotto prize. Here's Dave Goosling.
It's been a bleak year at Fisher & Paykel's Mosgiel plant. In April, the company announced it was shifting production overseas with a loss of 430 jobs. But this morning, 4 factory workers were smiling after their syndicate won Lotto's first division prize of $1 million. The foursome booked the day off work, travelling straight to Wellington to collect their winnings.
They were in disbelief. They've been all worried about their futures, worried about finding work, and now they've got some time to think about things. They're all $250,000 better off as of today.
The syndicate are long-time Fisher & Paykel employees. They each chose 2 numbers 7 years ago and take turns buying the weekly tickets. It's the 3rd $1 million winning ticket Barry Brown has sold at his store. He says the regular customers are very deserved winners.
Yes, couldn't come at a better time for people, so we're thrilled that they've been able to put it to good use.
After collecting their win, the group declined media interviews and celebrated with lunch at Wellington restaurant Monsoon Poon, keen for a spicy and a Speight's. Back home in Mosgiel, co-workers admitted to feeling a little jealous, but still very happy for their mates.
Oh, it's fantastic news actually, yeah. Couldn't have happened to a more deserving bunch of people.
We'll wait to come back tomorrow and hopefully they'll shout for us.
The quartet say they've hardly slept since winning the $1 million prize, but do still plan to clock in for work here at the Fisher & Paykel plant in Mosgiel tomorrow. The workers say they're conscious of the big win, coming as hundreds of others lose their jobs. But with redundancy payments due, it's likely the $1 million syndicate will keep working at the plant until the factory closes down. Dave Gooselink, 3 News.
The former head of the Immigration Service, Marianne Thompson, has appeared in court on 2 charges of using a document with the intent to defraud and another of dishonesty using a document. Thompson resigned her role at the Immigration Service amidst allegations she falsely claimed to have held a doctorate from the London School of Economics. It's alleged she claimed the doctorate on a CV when applying for government jobs, including as advisor to the Prime Minister's office. Police have confirmed the charges relate to the use of a document in 1998, 99 and 2004. Thompson didn't enter any plea. A father whose 2 young children drowned in a boating tragedy has been sentenced to community service for operating a vessel in a manner causing unnecessary danger or risk. Maritime New Zealand told the court Lindsay Roll's boat sank on Anzac Day because he hadn't put its bung in. Kim Chisnell was in court.
It was a maiden voyage that ended in horror. Roll's lawyer told the court the family fishing boat went down like the Titanic, taking 8-year-old Erina and 5-year-old Travis Rolls with it, despite the efforts of their mother to hold on to them.
The next thing she knows is that she lost her children and she's floating to the surface. And from there, pandemonium, sheer panic by all the adults involved. They're desperately trying to find the children, and it was not successful.
But just how did the boat sink? The Crown prosecutor told the court Lindsay Rolls, the children's father, failed to notice a missing bung because he never did a safety check.
One of the first and most obvious safety checks that anyone would do in relation to the next trip is to check that the bung is in.
The boat was launched at Torpedo Bay at 11 a.m. and water began to seep in. At Palm Beach on Waiheke Island, where it docked for several hours, the adults drank alcohol while the kids swam in the sea. At 4 p.m. they travelled to Onitangi, where they went ashore for dinner at the RSA. More alcohol was purchased. At 7 p.m. they went back out to sea, this time to Tarahiki Island to fish. At some point during the night, Rolls awoke to find water throughout the boat. He immediately headed for land, but the boat hit rocks. The jolt sent water rushing to the back, making it tip and sink shortly after they sent out a distress call at 3 a.m. The judge told Rolls he had completely overlooked basic safety steps.
You have already endured unimaginable grief and guilt, but the court must still send a message to others about the need for special care when combining recreation, water and people's lives.
Rolls's partner Tanya, the mother of the 2 children, sat in court crying throughout the sentencing. At one point a prison guard walked over and handed her a box of tissues. Maritime New Zealand said it had to make an example of Rolls in the hope that fellow boaties would learn from his tragedy. Kim Chisnell, 3 News.
The World Cup's been in New Zealand just 1 day, but already the Kiwis management is talking up the possibility of defending the Cup at home. The comments came as the trophy was handed over to its guardians for the next 5 years, the New Zealand Rugby League Museum in Auckland. Carmen Parahi reports.
The Rugby League World Cup is now in the safe hands of museum curator Don Hammond, and the significance of the moment was obvious in the former Kiwis' tearful eyes.
Oh, well, I just think it's the emotion part, yes, because it's such a great achievement.
The trophy was made by the French for the astronomical sum of 8 million francs in 1954. By 1950 it was considered fat and ugly and was replaced by a smaller gold version. During its years in exile, the original cup was stolen and later found in a rubbish dump. But times changed and it was reinstated to its former position of power in 2000. Kiwis manager Gordon Gibbons kept the cup safe at his home last night, but admits even his family took a backseat to the trophy.
I did take it to bed with me last night. I've been away for 5 weeks and what do I get to cuddle up to? The trophy.
The Kiwis beat the odds in Australia on Saturday night 34-20 to become world champions for the first time in 54 years. Although some fans met their heroes last night at the airport, plans are being made for the rest of New Zealand to meet them too.
We are going to bring the boys home and I think that they deserve to come back here and get the accolades that they so richly deserve.
3 News spoke with various city and district councils around the country, and most were open to the idea of holding a parade for the victorious Kiwi squad and the World Cup. Gibbons says although the Australians lost the World Cup, the actual event was a financial winner for them, making a $5 million profit, and he wants New Zealand to put in a bid to host the next tournament in 5 years' time.
That maybe it could be a joint bid. I think that to have some games here as well as in Australia, I think that we could be able to do that.
So tonight the World Cup is safe in the Rugby League Museum, and if the Kiwis get to defend it at home in 5 years, it may decide to make this room its permanent home. Carmen Parahi, 3 News.
Stay with us. After the break on Nightline, a Holocaust survivor's grandson is jailed for attacks on Jews and homosexuals. And how did Michael Jackson avoid fronting up for his much-anticipated courtroom thriller in London?
On the programme tomorrow, we discuss the ANZ's growth strategy in Asia, and we'll get you to New York as investors gear up for a week that brings news of Obama's new economic team. Join me at 6:30 tomorrow morning for ASB Business.